A very good morning. Am I audible to all of you? Welcome to all of you. From today, we'll start the anthropology, our lectures, and it will approximately consist of 105 6 lectures, which we will cover in due course of time, maybe in 4.5 months, and will make sure that this journey of learning about the society, learning about humankind, and learning about ourselves becomes interesting and also enriching, and it will help you to qualify the exam with flying colors. Okay. So before I begin, I just want to tell you ki how and in what way I will like to proceed. So see, today we'll begin with theories, Unit 6 in Paper 1, theories. So there are 10 theories altogether, and it approximately takes me 23 to 25 lectures to cover theories. And after that, we will cover the rest of the chapters like unit number 5, unit 4, 3, and 2, like this. Okay, in the same order also. So we'll make sure that the socio-cultural anthropology gets covered first, and then after approximately for 50 60 lectures, we'll start with physical anthropology. After 50 lectures, physical anthropology, and that makes it approximately 30 lectures, and approximately 25 lectures of paper 2. So that makes it 100 lectures of total anthropology. Okay. See, before I begin with theories, I'd like to tell ki how my class will be there. So I'll explain the theoretical concepts. I'll also give some of the notes as a dictation. I'll dictate some of the terms and terminologies. Moreover, I will provide you the handout after the class, after I have taught the topic. I'll not, please do not request for material before the topic has been taught. Once the topic has been dealt in the class, then you will be provided with uh, study material. Okay, but the basic material which you have to rely upon is something that I have been discussing in the class. You have to make sure that whatever I am telling you, you have to write it down the as running notes, and moreover whatever I'll be dictating, that also you have to write it down, and that will be the basic standard material that you have to refer for most of the topics. And then in some cases you might find the class notes being not that much organized or not that much sophisticated. So in that case, in order to make it more organized or more formalized, you can say, you can refer the handout material. Okay. And आप उसमें definitions, whatever definitions are there, that you can verbatimly copy. And but the basic material should always be your class notes. Okay, whatever class notes will be, and will make sure that each and every single topic is being covered in the class. So your class notes in itself become very much exhaustive. Now coming to theories, that when we start theories, so this is one of the most typical chapter, most crucial chapter of anthropology. And if you are able to understand this, then rest of the anthropology becomes a cakewalk. And if there is a difficulty in this chapter, then rest of the anthropology will basically seem to you like something you just have to mug up, something that you have just have to remember, because you won't be able to connect the topics. So that's why we are giving only 20 lectures, 25 lectures to single unit itself, because it's very important, and it will help you till the end also. Okay, so theories, if you have any doubt, please feel free to ask, no matter how trivial it is. And after every concept, I'll just pause, give a pause, and I'll ask you whether it's okay, whether everybody of you have understood. If not, please raise the doubt immediately, and then we'll clear it then there itself, and then we'll move to the next concept. So this is how we will proceed in short. So let's begin with theories. So today we'll deal with the first theory. But before we begin the theory, if we see, as I have told you, what is anthropology? So anthropology is the holistic study of man across time and space. Anything related to human being. So anything related to human beings is under anthropology. Anything, how we feel, how we think, how we behave, how we act in a society, how society is related to it, how the society is created, why the culture changes in the very first place, and what are the reasons for the cultural changes, and what is the nature of the society, and what is the relationship between individual and the society, or individual as a member of the society, and what are the distinguishing characters of human being as a species that makes us unique from all other species like chimpanzees, apes, and other species. So this everything related to human being comes under a single discipline and being studied holistically. Okay, so this is what we are going to understand. So here, as I have told you that the first definition of anthropology was given by Aristotle in 4th century BC as a gossip that a man does about himself. So it's a gossip. Okay, and this gossip can be of any subject, it has no dimension, and that's why we in anthropology are covering each and every dimension about mankind. Okay, and then I have told you one more scholar about Ibn Khaldun, who is known as the Herodotus of the Asia. Okay, Herodotus of Asia, Ibn Khaldun. So basically, he like Herodotus traveled to ये भी काफी ज़्यादा travel करते थे. He used to travel to a lot of places, and he tried to understand the relationship between individual and society. So the first statement that he gave was that an individual, uh, the solidarity that an individual develops with the society is because of two things: kinship and religion. Kinship means relationships. Okay, in a very simple terms, we'll see in more detail about the kinship, but in the initial abhi discussion, we'll keep it to just relatives. Okay, so kinship and religion, they establish the solidarity in the society that binds the individual to the society, that connects the individual to the society. In fact, he gave a very interesting statement also. The first statement, he says that the climate is very much related to the kind of behavior that an individual does. Although this statement was not scientifically correct, but he was the first who talked about this. Like he says that people living in warm climate, okay, people living in areas like tropical areas, they have like more warmth, they have more passion, they are more loving, caring, and people living in the cold climate have very cold relationship also, or they do not are they are less emotional, they are more individual centric, and they care less about the society, and they are more selfish or self centered people. ऐसा इन्होंने बोला, but this was something he just went on to say, but without any scientific evidences. Okay, whatever he observed, he just wrote it down. Okay, like there are several scholars who came up with various theories. Okay, and so they talked about the theories, how culture developed, and how people they developed the society. So in the very first case, first let's see what actually theories are. ये theories होती क्या है? How we can understand, basically what I am trying to explain you. Why am I starting with the theory? So if you look into any discipline that you start, be it physics, chemistry, maths, or maybe any humanities like psychology, sociology, so every discipline has some basic guidelines, some template of thinking, so which is called as theories. So if you take any subject, it has some basic template of thinking. For example, in physics, we have read laws of motion. So there are theories regarding motion. There are theories of thermodynamics. There are theories of like electricity, theories related to magnetism, or theories of gravity. Okay, so any discipline has theories. Second, what constitute a discipline is methodology. That means how to collect data. Okay, So there will be certain methods related to how the data will be collected, and once the data is collected, you have to interpret the data. And how, when you interpret the data, when you try to understand the data, you will come up with a relationship, how this data is linked to each other. Okay, so these theories provide you a template of thinking, how data is connected to each other, or how we interpret the data. So once you interpret the data, you come out with a common thread that connects the data. That means that fits all of the data. So you collected a lot of data. For example, if when I'm talking about physics, so there is like you collected data about force, then mass of the object, and then acceleration. And multiple ways you collected this data: force, mass of the object, and acceleration. And then when you try to interpret the data, you will come across with a formula that force is equal to mass into acceleration. In the same way, when I'm talking about anthropological data, so you observe a lot of society and you come up with a lot of data, and this data, when you try to interpret, so you might come up with a particular theory or a particular logic that satisfies all the data. Okay, and this is a template of thinking. So basically you are interpreting the data in such a way and coming up with a central thought that is valid across all the data. When you see the data through that lens, you will feel that okay, this is valid for all the data. Okay, so this is what makes the theory. So a theory, just right, a theory is a set of propositions. Theory is a set of propositions or postulates, explaining the nature of society or cultures. Explaining the nature of society or culture. These are the statements. These are the statements that uses various ideas. These are the statements that uses various ideas to explain social phenomena. These are the statements that uses various ideas to explain any social phenomena. So it is a central line of thought. It is a central line of thought to explain any social phenomena. Okay. So I hope in short you are able to understand what is this theory. So basically in anthropology what we do is like we study multiple society, multiple cultures, and when we collect the data about that culture, so different scholars came up with different idea to interpret this culture, and they propose different ideas. Okay, and this are called as the theories. So they interpreted the society in a different manner, and these are the theories. So there are 10 theories that has been given. Okay, and most of the scholars in anthropology, they look to cultural data or culture of any society through this lenses, or they have this central thought in their mind and they try to understand the society from this central thought. Okay, it will become more clear once we have dealt with all the theories. So there are certain elements or components of a theory. So what are those elements? So there are four major elements of the theories. First one is the question of the theory. So basically what is the question? Question is the gap in the knowledge. So you have some question in your mind, for example, how religion is connected to economy, okay, or how religion is connected to politics, or for example, how does the man has a free will or he acts as a slave of the society. That means what I am doing is it my free will, I am completely autonomous, or whether society is making me do certain behavior or follow certain behavior. So that depends actually. Okay, so here this is the question, or what you can say, that it is a gap of knowledge, something we do not know. So we begin with a question, and in order to find the answer of that question, the gap of knowledge, we go and study certain societies or cultures. Okay, so the first element of a theory is the question. The second element of the theory is the assumption. For example, when if you are giving the laws of motion, so force weight is equal to mg. So you are assuming that the force of gravity is completely equal across all the places on Earth, but that is not the case. The places which are near to the center of Earth, say poles, वहाँ पे gravity ज़्यादा strong है, and equator, the places which are away from the core of the Earth, the gravity is weaker. So this is, but we assume that ki gravity is similar at all the places across Earth, and जिसके basis पे we say that the weight of a person across all the places on Earth is same. In the same way, we have a lot of assumptions. Okay, and these assumptions help us to find the answer, means to generalize the data. So we go with certain assumptions. Okay, this assumption is like uh, definitely religion and politics, they are connected to each other. First assumption is this. Okay, or maybe religion in some way influences the politics, or the person with more money is more powerful, or the person with, so something, some assumptions are there. Okay, and with this assumption we basically collect the data. So the third element will be the methods. So by what method are we going to collect the data? Okay, whether we are going to live in the society, means directly we visit the society, we live among them, and then we collect the data, or somebody else has gone there and has collected the data, and then we are just looking at the data which has been collected by somebody else. It's a secondary data, or maybe a primary mode of data collection should be there. But there are several ways, whether we are going for interview, or whether we are going giving questionnaire, means written questions upon which the answer has to be given by the society itself. So there are several methods to study a society, several methods to collect the data. Okay, and the last, once you have assumptions and methods and questions, so you come up with hypothesis. You have collected the data, so you generate an hypothesis, and with this hypothesis, or this is the preliminary form of the theory, and this hypothesis is justified by evidence. Okay, you have some data, you try to interpret the data, you come up with a hypothesis. Okay, something that you are preliminary finding is that okay, religion and economy are connected to each other. Okay, and here we have seen in this society, the one with more money is generally the one who is also considered to be ritually superior, or holds a post. For example, Brahmins in the ancient India, we can say that they were also economically superior as well as ritually superior. So in this way, we come up with a hypothesis and we justify this with evidences, whatever data that we have collected. So these are the elements of the theory: a gap, okay, that is the question, then assumptions that we have while collecting the data, then methods of collecting the data, and then finally the evidence to justify the hypothesis. Okay, don't worry, this will not be asked in the exam, but you have to understand in order to understand the theory in it. They won't ask you what are the elements of the theory and all that stuff, but just to start from the scratch, we need to understand that how we basically are going to construct a theory. Okay, so this is how the theories are constructed. Now, if we see that their anthropology, when it developed, it was not the case that from the very first day certain theories were made. Initially, Initially, what happened was that key anthropology, there were certain statements, okay, and which were generalized, or this were the general statement that were given by a lot of people, scholars, colonial masters or administrators, without giving any evidence or without having any proof to justify their statement. So this was what you can say the era of colonial writing. This was the era of colonial writing. That means when European powers or European nations, they started making great voyages to America, to South America, and to Africa, and also to India, Sri Lanka, and Australia, and they started to colonize these islands or these places or these continents. And when they observed the people living on those continents or those places, like in indigenous Americans or tribal Americans, not जब ये यूएस में गए तो they found that tribals were living there. Okay, today's American population that we see are the ones, the Britishers, the mainstream population are the Britishers which settled, or are the lineages of the Britishers which settled around 300 400 years back, okay, after the discovery of America. And the original inhabitant population of America are called as Native Indians, okay, or Red Indians. These are the original indigenous population of America which were suppressed by the colonial rules of Britishers. Okay, so anthropology before theory was mainly made up by colonial writing. Okay, these colonial rulers, they went to uh, America and these islands and these continents, and what they did was they just presented the picture of the indigenous population of these places as completely uncivilized, illiterate, and very animal like human beings, or a very animal like creatures, without any courtesy, without any etiquettes. They are cannibals, they are promiscuous, that means they are having sexual relationship with anybody, okay, and even brothers and sisters are also having sexual relationship. So they just try to portray a picture of these people as very similar to animals, okay, without any knowledge of science, without any technology, anything was not there, okay, and they are hardly able to communicate. Their language is also of a very rudimentary character. So this, अब ये why they were presenting such kind of picture, you should understand that these colonial powers wanted to justify their rule, or they wanted to say that yes, these people are not capable of self government, okay, and that's why we are the one who have technology, knowledge, we are developed society, and we basically are here to civilize them. So in order to justify the colonial rule over these societies, or over these people, the colonial writers started to present a picture of these society. So it was initially in the form of travelogues, or you will find several missionaries who went there to spread their culture and religion, Christianity. So missionaries writing, and they were completely devoid of factual accuracy, or they were completely, or they were full of factual errors. And moreover, these travelogues were having a lot of Christian prejudice. Okay, why? Because before the era of enlightenment, it was the rule of the church. Okay, but what actually happened, as I have told you in the previous introductory class also, that when when America was discovered by Columbus, it was basically a big challenge to the authority of church. Why? Because it was discovery of a place which had no mention in the Bible. Okay, people, since Bible was seen to be the encyclopedia of human, and also the encyclopedia of earth, so something like this, some place like this was never mentioned in biology, Bible. And that's why when discovery of America actually challenged the authority of church, okay, and it was the beginning of secularization of science. So science was taken away from the authority of church and God. Okay, there was a challenge to the authority of God and church. So this was the era of enlightenment. Okay, and this was the era, what you can say, era of reason. Okay, era of reason. So this phase is called in world history as the era of enlightenment. Okay, but Disco, what we can say, the era what you are normally referring in day-to-day life as the era of modernity or modernization of global politics, modernization of Europe, okay, which is also called with the name as Renaissance, okay, which basically challenged the authority of church over education, and it was the development of science, and there was a promotion of rationality, okay, the reason, rationality, science, and logic became the prominent idea during the phase of enlightenment. Okay, and here there came several scholars, or what you can say philosophers. Actually, when if we see, just to let you know, that philosophy is considered to be the mother of all the humanitarian disciplines. So initially people were philosophers. Okay, there were several social philosophers who used to see some society, see some behavior, and they used to comment upon it. Okay, and later on this comments or these ideas were developed with a lot of a lot of evidences or lot of data, and this led to development of a lot of other disciplines like psychology, uh, sociology, and anthropology during the era of enlightenment. So initially they were philosophers who used to comment, who used to give some general idea about a lot of societies. Okay, so in during this enlightenment era, it was seen as an era of reason. Okay, and this was here what happened during this period, which was during Renaissance, was science was taken away from the clutch of the church, and this is the period which is marked by a lot of scientific discoveries and inventions. Like steam engine, telephone, and most of the scientific discoveries and inventions, they started during this phase. And moreover, science became liberated, and moreover, reason became the center point of man's discussion. People used to gather at various places like chai ke stall and various other places, and they used to debate and discuss. They used to find out the reason. They have rejected the authority of God. They do not, they now want to find the reason for any supernatural, any natural phenomena like rain, flood, drought, anything like that. They do not just, they are not ready to accept the idea of God. Okay, and during this phase several scholars gave up a lot of idea, and this is where it was believed that progress is something that is inevitable in human life, or human life has been progressing since ages. Okay, so since uh, thousands of years there has been gradual progress in human life. So it's something, progress is something inevitable in human journey, and how the progress will come, as the man's ability to reason increases, the progress will automatically come. ठीक है, एंड यहीं से एक थ्योरी आती है सबसे पहली, दैट इज द थ्योरी ऑफ क्लासिकल एवोल्यूशनिज्म. Okay, which is based on the idea of progress. So let's begin with the first theory. Actually this idea of progress and enlightenment is, it's very deep. Okay, and it might take 4 or 5 lectures just to cover this only, but that is not required for you in exam, because the history of anthropology is not in our syllabus, or how this actually classical evolutionism derived from the idea of enlightenment, or how it is linked to it, it's not at all required in exam, and neither it will be asked in the exam anytime soon. Okay, so you just have to understand that the idea of progress was behind the first theory of anthropology, that is the classical evolutionism. So what this theory actually first time came in somewhere in mid 19th century. Okay, and what this theory says, that irrespective of place, all the cultures in the world have evolved in a particular sequence. Okay, so have the culture across the world in all the societies have followed the same path, and they have evolved in a particular sequence. Okay, and they have developed with time. So just write classical evolutionism. It says that social development and culture was witness of social development and culture was witness of successive development in sequences. Successive development in sequences. The present developed stage of mankind, the present developed stage of mankind had undergone progressive changes, has undergone progressive changes, in of which course of which the direction of evolution, in course of which the direction of evolution happened from in course of which the direction of evolution happened from simple to complex, homogeneous to heterogeneous, and indefinite to definite. So it is saying that all the cultures of mankind, चाहे वो is living in America or somewhere in Europe or maybe in Asia, India, Australia, South America, any place, if you see the culture of individuals or the culture of any society or any community, you will find that there has been development. It has developed with time. Moreover, there is a sequence of development. That means there are stages of development. And every culture, irrespective of area where it is found, every culture will follow the same stages of development. It will have the same stages of development no matter kahin pe bhi wo culture ho. Irrespective of place, wherever this culture is found, the culture will evolve in their a particular sequence, and the stages of development will be same. Okay, and the pattern of development will be somewhere like from simple to complex, homogeneous to heterogeneous, and indefinite to definite. I'll explain what is simple to complex. So initially it says that when we were living as a tribal, or when we were living in the forest as hunter gatherers, in the initial phases, okay, the culture is relatively very simple. Okay, very simple means we do not have any complicated organization. But as we evolve, as we become modernized, the culture become more complicated. Okay, we have like banking system, we have stock markets, we have complicated political procedures like elections, and then we have like a hierarchy of positions, like bureaucracy is there, and in bureaucracy army is there. Army, there is a different set of hierarchy. In bureaucracy there is a different set of hierarchy. And then we have like political structure which is very different and very uh, kind of bifurcated, wherein the separation of power is there. So the culture has become from simple to complex. Initially it was very simple. Okay, the politics was not that complicated. There is a chief, he is the head priest also, he is the head of the family also, he is the political head of the community also, and everything he controls. So it is very difficult to, in the simple societies, it's very difficult to distinguish between whether a decision is religious, economic, political, or what. Okay, because it's like a very small group of people who are more or less related to each other. So it's like a family discussion happening, or what you can say as a community is. So this culture is simple. Okay, and as we evolve, as the society become larger, as the society, as the culture evolves, it becomes more complicated. So from simple to complex, then homogeneous to heterogeneous. So in simple societies, for example, a group of tribes who are living in a particular society, in a particular place, they all behave in a very similar way. Okay, why? Because their experiences, their exposure is same. But now in Delhi or in a particular family also, you can say that uh, people's behavior is very much different. One might be more religious, the other might not be that religious. One might be speaking very good English, one other might not be speaking that good English. One might be more kind of a rebel, the other can be more like a submissive person who adheres to the society. Okay, so why? Because the exposure is different. Somebody might have taken science, somebody has taken art, somebody might not even study, he is more interested into business. So and moreover, across families, so multiple families are living, they are not completely alike. But in simple societies, you will find that the families are also alike, their behavior is very much similar. Okay, so from homogeneous to heterogeneous. Okay, for example, आज के time पे you can see your neighbor. It's not like that in a but people living in a particular colony, they are doing the same kind of job. Everybody is not a CA, everybody is not an engineer or doctor or maybe a politician. No, different people in different families, they are doing different kinds of job, different kind of occupation. So from homogeneous, in simple societies, everybody is doing the same kind of job. Everybody is hunter or gatherers. They do not have multiple skills or specialization of labor, but they are more or less homogeneous, very same to each other. From homogeneous to heterogeneous. And the third is indefinite to definite. What is meaning of indefinite? Initially, in the simple societies, what it says, this theory says that he there was no specific procedure for doing a particular task. It's more or less trial and error. Why? Because the knowledge was very limited in the simple societies. Knowledge about a particular phenomena or scientific knowledge is very limited. And that's why they do not have any particular way of dealing with a particular phenomena. They will, something new comes up and they will come up with a new solution. But as we have evolved or as we are living right now, it's not that every time we are going for trial and error or trying some new methods to solve a problem or a better one. But we have specific way of dealing a problem, most of the problem. Okay, so the behavior has become more definite from indefinite. So this is the pattern of evolution. I hope it's clear to you. I'll stop here, and if you have any doubt, just write it in the chat box. I'll just look into it. Any doubt? Or if you don't have any doubt, you can just write no so that I can proceed. At least write yes or no, anything. Okay. Okay, there is a doubt from when development of anthropology started. So if we try to answer this question, uh, we can say that official anthropology as a discipline, when it was started as a discipline, started somewhere at the end of 18th century and in the beginning decades of 19th century. But as a means the kind of disputes or debates or the content that we are going to read in anthropology, this was a part of the discourse of the people very early times also. Even in 3rd, 4th century BC, we were discussing or we were debating on the same kind of topics that we will be dealing in anthropology. But if we say that when a particular discipline which will be taught academically was started, so it is definitely in the last decade of 18th century and beginning decade of 19th century. Okay, wherein it became a official discipline, and that was to be taught in particular colleges, and wherein several scholars came up to be identified as anthropologists. Okay, so this is evolutionism, a basic idea that every culture, irrespective of whatever place you study, will have to pass through particular sequence, or there will be stages of development independently of each other. Means all the cultures, just write this down, all the cultures independently will pass through the same stages of development. All the cultures independently will pass through same stages of development. Okay, that means my culture or the culture of people living in Europe or the culture of people living in Africa will definitely have the same stages of development. Okay, independently means it's not like that ki one culture will pass through different stages, the other will pass through other stages. It's not like that. Every culture has to pass through the same stages of development. That means, like, for example, in India, if you want to be called as a graduate, so there is a particular pattern. So you go to a school, you start from lower kg, then upper kg, then class 1, 2, 3, 4, and simultaneously you go till class 10th, then you go for 11th or 12th, and then you go for graduation. Okay, so 3 or 4 years of graduation, then you are called a graduate. So the path is same for everyone. In order to be a graduate, it's not like that you take admission in class 10th and then you read about class first and then you go for graduation. It's not like that. The path will be the same. In the same way, every culture, it says, has to pass through the same stages of development. Okay, there is some doubt. Just a second. What is done when an Indian scholar and a European scholar has difference of thought over observation made by traveler in 19th century? Will both be considered theories? Okay, we'll come to this. Why? Because when we say that this is a theory, so you should not confuse it with a law. Okay, for example, in physics, we call it as a laws of motion. Why? Because these are universally applicable. But here these are called as theories. That means that might be justifying some of the data, but since it is not universal, so it has never been able to update itself to a law. And in most of the cases, when what happens when one scholar does not agrees with some theory, so in contradiction with that theory, they might come up with some other explanation, and that gives birth to another theory. And in such a way, we will see, as we'll see in due course of time, there will be several theories, and these are made in contradiction or in critique of the previous theory that we will read. So the first theory that we are seeing is evolutionism. The next theory, that is diffusionism, is something that was based on the premise of critique of evolutionism. Okay, so this is how the same data will be interpreted in a different manner by different scholars, and that will give rise to different theories also. Okay. So every society will pass through the same stages of development in the same sequences independently. This is the uh, basic idea of evolutionism. So just write a heading, that is salient features of this theory, salient features of evolutionism. The first one is that the society, each society or each culture, sorry, evolves in unilinear pattern. Each culture evolves in a unilinear pattern or unilinear manner. Okay, and these stages of evolution are called as savagery, barbarism, and civilization. So each culture will start from savagery, will move to the second stage of barbarism, and then final stage of development is the stage of civilization. And this is the unilinear manner or pattern that will be followed by each and every culture. What is unilinear means? It will follow this straight line and in the same direction. It's not like that if some culture is barbaric, so it will come back. Okay, it's not like that. It's the idea of progress which is central to it. So it believes that if a culture is in this stage, it will move in only this direction. Or suppose if the culture is in this stage, the only way it can move is in the direction of civilization. It is not possible that it will degenerate again to savage stage. It's not like that. So idea of progress was central to it since it was the era of modernization. So savagery to barbarism to civilization. These are the three stages of cultural development. Okay, savagery to barbarism to civilization. That culture evolves in a unilinear fashion. Then, second is the evolution. The direction of evolution is from simple to complex, that we have seen, homogeneous to heterogeneous, and indefinite to definite. Simple to complex, homogeneous to heterogeneous, indefinite to definite. So this is the direction of evolution. Okay, simple to complex, homogeneous to heterogeneous, and indefinite to definite. Okay, the third salient feature, which is very important, and this will be very much interesting to you, how they say that this is the reason they believe, or evolutionary scholar believe that every culture will follow the same stage of development. They say that this similarity between cultures is because of a particular phenomena which is called as psychic unity of mankind. Why every culture is following the same stage, or why there is a similarity between different cultures? So this similarity is actually called as a technical word in anthropology as parallels. Okay, so they say that parallels is because or parallels are because of psychic unity of mankind. Okay, so psychic unity of what it says, psychic unity of mankind का मतलब क्या है? It says that कि man across time and space thinks in a similar manner. There is a cognitive similarity between man or of different culture, or no matter, just by virtue of being a human being, you think very similar. आप एक जैसा ही सोचोगे, no matter what. Okay, and when you think similar, you will come up with the same solution for a same problem. So when you face a particular problem, you will come up with a same solution, and that is psychic unity of mankind, and due to which, since you are coming up with the same solution for the same kind of problem that you are going to face, you will have similar stages of development, that is savagery to barbarism to civilization. So this is because of psychic unity of mankind. That means similarities or parallels are because the mankind thinks in the same manner. Okay, they will come up with the same solution for the similar kind of problem. Okay, let me give you a very trivial example. For example, everybody in your class 9, 10th, 11th or 12th, you have done cheatings. ठीक है, आपने चीटिंग की होगी एग्जाम टाइम में, and you must have definitely used some chits, or what we used to call in our language was farre. Okay, so you must have used it, you utilize some of the methods for cheating. You must have like written it on your hand, you must have used small chits, and you have inserted it into your pen cap. Okay, and this method is being followed by you also, and will be followed by your juniors, and then again your juniors, and was also followed by your seniors. Okay, and you usually start following this method when you reach the age of 13, 14 or 15. Okay, maybe in class 8, 9th or 10th. Okay, this is the age when you start doing it. So evolutionists would explain it by psychic unity of mankind. So as and when the syllabus of your exam increases, it becomes difficult for you to remember by heart everything that is present in your syllabus. And in that case, you come up with the same kind of solution of cheating. Okay, and you also devise a similar method of cheating. Nobody teaches you that, but you just devise that method of cheating. Okay, this is what is called as psychic unity of mankind. Means faced with the same problem, will come up with the same kind of solution. Mankind thinks in a very similar manner. That is psychic unity of mankind. I think everybody is clear regarding psychic unity of mankind. Is it? Shall I move forward? Uh, there is a question, that is, what is savagery, barbarism? You will come to know what are the stages of savagery or barbarism. Different scholars have given different explanation regarding savagery, what constitutes savagery. This is just a random classification that is given by evolutionists. Different evolutionists have given different properties on the basis of which they have classified several categories of people as savage or barbaric or anything like that. Okay. So there is no objective criteria per se which can be seen, but overall we can say that ki savagery is somewhere the people who hunt. Okay. Barbaric are the people who are herders, and civilization is the place when they start living settled life, agriculture वगैरह करने लग जाते हैं, and that is the kind of civilization. Okay. Rest in psychic unity of mankind. Any doubt? There is a doubt that says that indefinite to definite का मतलब क्या है? Okay, indefinite to definite. For example, let's see this like this way. You are writing a aptitude test and you are given a question and you haven't solved it before. Okay, and you have to give the solution of it. You tried a method, it failed. You tried another method, it failed. You tried third method, it again failed. The fourth one method that you tried, it gave you the good result, but it took a lot of time, like maybe 15-20 minutes to solve the problem. Okay, then next time you get the same problem, you will be looking for some shortcuts, some easier solution. You are developing a better method to solve the problem. In the same way, when the societies are simple or were not that much developed, the culture was not that developed, so most of the problems that the mankind faced, they did not have any specific solution for that problem. All they had to do was trial and error. And after they have developed good solutions for it, they basically stick to it. And now the behavior becomes more predictable. The behavior is more definite in that case. The things, for example, you are born, you are sent to the school basically, and schooling, after schooling you are sent to the college, and then after college you do some kind of job, or you prepare for UPSC, and after UPSC you qualify UPSC, you get married. Okay, you have kids. So there are certain specific behavior that everybody is following, a overall macro level, but that is not specific or not definite when the society was very much simple. It's not clear cut that everybody has to follow the same path. Okay, different kinds of problems, they have to devise new or innovate solutions for it. Okay, the behavior were very much indefinite, but now we have developed a lot of knowledge, the behavior becomes definite. Okay, so from indefinite to definite, this was the pattern of evolution. Okay, now I hope you are able to understand that how they have explained similarities between culture, or why they do believe that every culture will follow the same stage of development. Okay, that is psychic unity of mankind. Everybody in the same problem thinks of the same solution. And they have also given a lot of examples. For example, there are several scholars who are evolutionists who say that one very good example is discovery of zero. So we are being taught, or we generally know, that zero was discovered in India. Okay, but there are different civilizations who have credentials or who have valid proof of discovery of zero. That is like Mayan civilization, Babylonian civilization, and Indian civilization. Okay, they have credentials of discovery of zero. That means they were facing some problems of writing bigger numbers, and that's why they might have come up with the same kind of solution. So similar problems, people come up with the same solution. Why? Because they think similarly. Psychic unity. Psychic means the how a person thinks. So there is a similar thinking pattern, and that's why they come up with the same kind of solution, which leads to same stages of development across culture. Okay, so savagery, barbarism to civilization. And the last feature is, how do we believe that, or what are the proofs of evolution? So the proof of evolution is survival. Survival means uh, something that is a habit, or this is a cultural practice that was practiced in the past, in the earlier phases, but it is not, it is practiced due to force of habit in the present time, but has no contemporary relevance. A habit which is, or a cultural trait or cultural behavior that is followed due to force of habit but has no contemporary relevance. कि कई सारी चीजें we are following it without any relevance. We do not know what's the relevance of it. For example, let me give you a very good example. We shake hands. Okay, why do we shake hands? Is there any relevance of it? How do we, means why in the initial phase we meet a person, we shake hands? Actually, this was a practice when there was a lot of warfare, and when two army generals, they used to meet with each other, they used to shake hand, and shaking hand was a symbolic, or was a gesture to show that the person in front of you is not carrying any weapons. So they used to shake hands, and it was to prove that I am not here with any weapon, I won't harm you. So shaking hand was a practice that was developed then. Now it is being practiced since then due to the force of habit, but it has no contemporary relevance. We are shaking hands thinking that it's a symbol of friendship or it's something like that, but this is not the case. When this practice was developed, it has some other function. But now that kind of society has gone, that particular necessity has been uh, ended, but still we keep on shaking hands. The reason is it's due to the force of habit. Lot of things that we do, it's just because of force of habit. We do not have any such kind of need, and this is survival. So these survivals are, what you can say, are the vestiges of the past culture that we have. That means these are the habits and practices of the culture of the past, which is an evidence that yes, the culture has evolved, the culture has changed with time, and these are some of the practices that we used to do in the past and had relevance in the past, but now despite not having relevance, these are the practices that we might be following due to the force of habit. मतलब करते करते आदत बन गई है इसकी. We do not know its relevance, still it's a habit, we are doing it. So these are the proofs of evolution. For one more example is there, like टीका लगाना, tilak. So I don't know, I am not very much aware of any contemporary relevance of using tilak. So there might be some spiritual reason, but the idea of tilak or tagging might have come up basically as a way of distinction between two particular community who might have looked overall similarly, physically similar. Maybe there might have been people who are ritually more superior, and they might have used a way of tilak in order to tag themselves or in order to project their identity. I don't know. This might be the reason, or it might have some other relevance in the past, but still, it has no contemporary relevance in the past, and still we are using it due to the force of habit. A lot of other practices are there, which we are following it due to the force of habit. For example, the turban that we as a Sikh, or maybe a lot of communities that they tie, basically it's a survival. Why? Because let me tell you, the most of the Sikh, uh, they evolve from, or they are, their ancestors are from Sindh and also from Afghanistan. They were people from Afghanistan who settled to Sindh and Punjab. They came to Punjab and Sindh, and these people, they were living in deserts, and they used to wear long clothes in order to protect themselves from dust. Okay, but still, when they came to Sindh and Punjab, they had this habit of tying the turban, irrespective of whether there is dust storm or not. So, something that was a technology that was devised to protect themselves from dust storm has now become a part and parcel of the culture. Okay, it's a survival which is being practiced due to force of habit without any contemporary relevance. And this basically shows that yes, our culture has evolved. Okay, these are the proofs of evolution. Okay, these are vestigious. So in our body also there are several vestigious organs जिसका कोई relevance नहीं है. For example, appendix. Okay, it's said that this appendix have no uh, specific रेलिवेंस. ओके, और जब भी, या थायराइड, जब भी किसी के थायराइड, सॉरी थायराइड कह रहा हूँ, tonsils, sorry. Okay, so tonsils. So whenever somebody's tonsils grow in size, it is being cut from the throat, because these tonsils do not have any relevance. Or maybe appendix. Appendix normally, when it grows beyond a particular size and it starts creating problems, so they are cut from the body. So these are vestigious organs which have no particular relevance in the body, but these are the proofs that yes, we have evolved from apes, or we have evolved from various animals. This may appendix played a very important role. But now, since we are humans, maybe appendix has lost its function. In the same way, the culture also has evolved from previous culture, our present culture, and in past culture, there would have been certain practices which have been relevant at that point of time. But since we were practicing it, and due to force of habit, we are also practicing it right now. But this time, these practices have no contemporary relevance. So कोई function नहीं है. But this is just because of force of habit we are doing. So this is the proof of evolution. So these are the salient features of classical evolutionism. The first being that culture evolves in a unilinear manner or pattern, and that this unilinear pattern or stages are savagery to barbarism to civilization. Then the direction is from simple to complex, homogeneous to heterogeneous, indefinite to definite. Then the parallels or similarities between cultures is because of psychic unity of mankind. People think or come up with the same solution in the same problem. Okay, and then survivals are the proof of evolution. These are the practices called cultural behaviors which are being done due to force of habit and have no contemporary relevance. These are the proof of evolution. Okay, so this is the salient feature of uh, classical evolutionism. We'll pause for 2 minutes so that if you have any doubt, just please write it in the chat box, and then we'll continue. Any doubts? Survival concept. Okay. So there is a doubt that the person has not understood survival. Survival are those behavior, okay, which we are doing it right now, but we do not know the relevance of it. Why we behave in such a manner, we do not know. Like I told you, like shaking hands. किसी से आप जाते हो हाथ मिलाते हो, you don't know why you are doing it. Maybe you think like कि it's a method of showing gratitude, but why in the very first place this is the method for showing gratitude? Okay, why do I have to shake hands? How does it shows our gratitude with the people, or how does it shows our feeling towards that person? No, this was the practice that was developed when the societies were on war, and at that point of time, two generals, when they used to meet, they used to shake their hands in order to show each other that yes, I am not carrying any weapons in my hand. They used to show their empty hand, just to and to show their empty hand, they used to shake hand of each other. If somebody is carrying a weapon, or say sword, somewhere in the dress, so his hand will become more bulky, or weight ज़्यादा हो जाएगा. He will come to know. So that's why shaking hand developed as a practice, but it is being continued till now. But today there is no relevance of it. The purpose for which this habit was developed has now been it's not needed right now. But still we used to shake hands. So this is a practice that is survival. This is the practice of previous culture that we used to have, but it is being carried right now due to force of habit. हम आदत की वजह से कर रहे हैं. It's not at all relevant, which shows that this means that our culture has evolved from the previous culture. That's why we are following that practice. So these are survivals. Okay, is it clear now? Yes or no? Ratan, is it clear now? Okay, any other doubts? Any other doubts, or shall we continue? Okay. See, I'll be asking this much uh, about the doubts or something till the time of theories, because it's you have just begun, and if you don't understand in the initial phase, you will lose the interest at all. And at that point of time, it will be very much difficult for you to continue the whole of anthropology. So I'll make sure that you understand theories in a proper manner, and uske baad, once you have understood the theories, there will be no problem at all in understanding the rest of the topics, because the rest of the topics are very easy for you, will be very easy. Okay, and maybe after theories, I usually prefer that 2 or 3 people should sit in the class, and as the condition normalizes within 1 week, I will definitely request that anybody who is in Delhi and would like to attend the offline class should come here and sit in the class. I'll be more than happy to uh, entertain them, because यहाँ पे it becomes very easy to connect with the student. Okay, so these are the salient features of evolutionism, and I think I should stop right now for the first day, okay, because it might become overburdened. So from tomorrow we'll start with scholars. Okay, the first scholar being E.B. Tyler, Edward Brunet Tyler, Morgan, L.H. Morgan, and Fraser. So tomorrow we'll cover these two scholars, and in tomorrow I'll also give you a notes on classical evolutionism. So let's keep it this much for today, and we'll continue in the next class. That's it for today. Thank you so much.